Welcome to the ATP Project. You're with your hosts, Matt and Jeff. How are you, Matt?
Oh, good, thanks, mate.
We're here in Lake Tahoe, and we're meeting with special guest today, Mark Devine.
Here we are.
G'day, Mark. How are you?
Good day.
Good to have you on.
G'day. I'm practicing, yeah.
You're local straight away, no problem at all. Mark, you're a retired Navy SEAL, and you've got your business, which is SEALFit, and you've also got your other business, which is, because you've got a couple of different businesses going on. You're a serial entrepreneur as well too. So do you want to maybe talk a little bit about what you do, what it is that you're passionate about, and
sure thing, mate.
We'll have a chat.
Cheers. Sounds great. Cheers. So yeah, I was a Navy SEAL officer for 20 years, retired as a commander in 2011. Active still in training a lot of the SEAL candidates through SEALFit. In fact, I got into that because I was hired by the Navy to start a nationwide mentoring program for SEAL candidates. That was a government contract. I held on to that for 1 year. So apparently I wasn't very good at government contract work. The whole thing was stolen from me by this billion-dollar company, you know.
Oh, wow.
And that was a lot of fun. When the dust settled from that, I said, you know what, government contract is not for me, and I really wasn't able to do what I wanted to do, which was to bring kind of an integrative, more holistic training, similar to what I had experienced. My training background, I was an athlete growing up, like most of us, rower, swimmer, triathlete, loved running, loved climbing mountains and stuff. But then at 21, I got into the martial arts. That was my first real kind of developmental model, which wasn't just like, oh, you go and do a sport over here, and then you go to school, and then you just do that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Whereas a martial art, and this was a really authentic martial art with a grandmaster, was a Zen master.
Yeah, what type of martial art? I'm thinking of Keto or something like that? It wasn't. I'm now training Aikido because I think that's just a brilliant martial art. Yeah.
This was a traditional Okinawa karate style that had spun out and then became kind of it was actually founded in America. By the head instructor for Kokunsai.
Right.
And
so
in America.
Kokunsai karate?
No, it's called Seido karate.
Seido. Okay.
Right. So Kokunsai was Masayama. Masayama kind of was one of Gichu Funakoshi's top students. That was Shotokan. Shotokan is world famous.
Yeah.
And Masayama is famous for cutting the horn off of a charging bull with his hand.
Oh, wow.
Did that really happen?
It really happened.
Wow. It's not just legend, it really happened.
It's not legend.
Wow.
Well, a lot of these things. Now, here's the thing. Nakamura, I watched him in Madison Square Garden with his head just obliterate 6 1-foot thick blocks of ice that were stacked on top of each other.
Ice.
With his forehead.
Wow.
Oh, yeah.
And, so this is like, it really inspired me. I'm like, how the hell did he do that? And how does his sensei chop the horn off of a charging bull? And how does Ushiba, who is the founder of Aikido, he had a standing order. I know I'm already going down this rabbit hole. I haven't even gotten close to telling you my story, but this is fascinating.
I love this.
Ushiba had the standing order but challenge that anyone who wanted to could literally take a shot at him. Like physically, he'll sit on his stool, and you can line up, 25 yards away with a pistol and shoot him. And nobody could do it. And so there's stories, where like 3 or 4 people would line up, and they'd say, okay, I'm ready. And they would shoot him. And before the first round made it down range, he was behind the individual who was the first to pull the trigger. And they all pulled the trigger at the same time, but he could tell who was faster.
Oh, gosh.
And he was tossing him on the ground.
Wow.
How do you do that? At any rate, I was fascinated with the martial arts when I got into that, and I began a developmental path that included physical training, hard physical training, on the dojo floor and in the woods and on the beaches, breath work, meditation, Zen meditation, and visualization. And all those were, part of it was taught by Nakamura, who was the Zen master, and part of it was just stuff that I kind of coddled together and started doing, and I was 20 years old. You guys know a lot about neuroplasticity and the growth of the brain, and a 20-year-old kid is like still very, very evolving what's going to go on. That was a profound experience for me because over 4 years of training where I got my black belt and doing Zen meditation every single day and doing a visualization practice, I transformed from being this kid who went to New York City thinking they were going to go into business. I was in business as a certified public accountant, getting my MBA at NYU, getting my certified public accountant. And then I was going to go off and make a ton of money and then probably come back and run the family business on upstate New York. Instead, I went off to be the most elite commando that the modern world has seen.
Wow.
An officer in the U.S. Navy SEALs. And I attribute 100% to the meditation, which opened me up to my real calling in life. And my calling in life wasn't to be in business to make a lot of money. It was to be a warrior and to lead individuals in the most demanding and arduous situations on the planet.
Yep.
The way I would fulfill that ultimately was to be a Navy SEAL officer.
Wow.
That was profound. And so I'm getting to kind of where we are now. I went into the SEALs and I kept doing what I could, but because we were so busy in the SEALs, I couldn't continue as traditional martial arts practice. But the SEALs training had a lot of similar attributes, and then some others that I didn't even find in the traditional martial arts. So I was on active duty for 10 years, had an extraordinary, leadership career, but left active duty in '97, largely because I had gotten married. And my marriage, the Navy basically said, "Hey, if we want you to have a wife, we would have issued you one."
Right. Standard issue.
So you would have been standard issue, but you see, it wasn't in your kit. The wife was not in your kit. And because, when I kept asking, I say, "Hey, you know what? I just got married. Can I have a little bit of time with my wife?" They're like, yeah. And then the very next day, they'd send me away for 6 months. And
Wow.
You know what I mean? It was obvious, right?
Yeah.
But my wife came to me and had that come to Jesus talk with me.
Sure.
It's me or the Navy.
Yeah.
So I chose her and got out. But fortunately, we have this thing called the reserves in the U.S. military. And the SEAL reserves, I swear to God, it's probably the best job on the planet because I could be a civilian. I got back into business. That's when I started SEAL Fit. That's when I got hired by the government to mentor Navy SEALs because there's other factors, but they knew I had some skills already to train people because of these really cool experiences I had. And so I was able to kind of wear both hats.
Yeah.
And I could make a phone call and say, "Hey, Joe, down at, Naval Special Warfare Group 1, what do you got for me?" And I would pack all of my reserve training into 60-day blocks of time.
Okay.
And then the rest of the year I was a civilian.
Oh, wow, okay.
It was pretty cool. And then I got mobilized twice, once to the Middle East, another time directly to Iraq to fight in Iraq in 2004. During that time, I continued my training, and when I got off active duty, I wanted to get back into the martial arts, but now I'm living in North County, San Diego, and I couldn't find anything that was even remotely similar to what I'd experienced with Nakamura and a real strict, mind, body, spirit training. There was just nothing until I stumbled into yoga. And I found yoga through Paramahansa Yogananda's Autobiography of a Yogi, which everybody on this podcast should read. It's just an extraordinary book. And I started studying true yoga. I tried to find, anyone who could understand or could teach me what I had read in that book, which wasn't the stretchy, bendy fitness yoga.
Yeah.
Right.
It was the Ashtanga's 8 limbs, the ethical precepts, the disciplines, the breath control, the concentration meditation. What does it mean to be enlightened? What are the different stages of samadhi? How do you experience that?
Yeah.
And so I've been on a quest ever since to really train, and I've had over 1,000 hours of teacher trainings from really, really authentic teachers. And during this time, I got back into the martial arts as well, and I studied ninjutsu and now Aikido, and I realized these are the same.
Yeah.
They're just different manifestations of the same type of training. So and there's nothing like it in the West. And as you guys know, most people aren't going to put a gi on and have to learn. I mean, it's really hard to learn Japanese and to structure to fit yourself into that Eastern model of I'm a yogi or I'm a martial artist. Most people who do those do it for the fitness benefit, or they think MMA is the same thing, and it's not. Right? It's not the development.
And in the military, did they teach you that? I know you did a lot of that stuff, but they do the Eastern style as well.
No,
or is it more of the fitness style?
No, they're pretty much MMA. It's all about
survival.
It's all about inflicting grievous injury as soon as possible because it's life or death.
Yeah.
And so they are. In fact, this is ironic. I've been teaching these skills. When I say these skills, the skills of concentration, meditation, visualization, and breath control are probably the primary ones in the context of creating a more modern, kind of holistic and world-centric warrior, specifically through the U.S. Special Operations. I've been teaching that since 2007. The candidates, the people that I send through SEAL training or go through pararescue or Green Beret training, they're different. Just like I was different. When I went through SEAL training, 185 students, 19 of us graduated. I graduated number 1 in my class, and my entire boat crew was there with me because we did something different than what everyone else was doing.
Yeah, right.
right? We were using these skills, and I was teaching them, and through my example mostly, but I also just through my ability to stay in control and break things down, and to not let the external stress affect the internal. So always just breathing and concentrating and asking, what's the right thing? What do I need to do right now to succeed? Don't worry about tonight or tomorrow, or the next day, or 6 months from now.
Yeah.
So my entire boat crew graduated with me. My COO recently did the math on that. He said there was like a 1 in a million chance of that happening.
Wow.
It was pretty cool.
Wow, that's very cool.
I wanted to teach these things. I couldn't do it through the government contract. I lost the government contract. It makes total sense to me now because it wasn't in alignment with my calling.
I was going to say, at the time though, how devastated were you in the fact that you lost that contract?
Well, it was a big deal. It was like a $10 million contract.
Yeah.
So we were kind of off to the races. We were finally seeing some financial success. But during the course of that year, by the way, when it comes to the way the Navy measured our success, we just knocked the ball out of the park.
Yeah.
Like we destroyed it. We took the screening test pass rate. This is how they wanted to measure. A recruit has to pass what we call a physical screening test. The recruiter puts them through the test. They have to pass it in order to get orders to go to boot camp and then to BUDS. Or then there's now a follow-on training called BUDS Prep. 100% of the candidates pass it according to the recruiter. But when they go to boot camp, they have to take it again. And only 33% would pass it.
Why? What
Because
was
the recruiters were gun decking it, or they weren't holding the standards, accountable standards. They were just going for the numbers. Their incentive was to get the numbers, where the SEALs' incentive is to get the quality.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I went in there, and within a year, 85% or more were passing the screening test at boot camp.
Wow.
And then I lost the contract.
Wow. It doesn't make sense, right?
No,
It doesn't make any sense. It was all right. It was all about the money.
Follow the money.
Yeah, and that's
Follow
what
the
we were
money.
talking about.
And so
in
to answer your
podcast,
question, Jeff, I was a little bit bummed, but I didn't, I was able to go right back to my training really quickly and be like, okay, just breathe into this, go back to the meditation bench, look at the bigger picture, find the silver lining. Light and dark exists within everything.
Yes.
Negativity and positivity. And so the negative part was I just got a $10 million contract stolen from me. And everybody was saying, fight those bastards, right? You got a case. And I'm thinking, yeah, you're right. But everything happens for a reason. What's the reason?
Couldn't
it
agree
took
more.
me about 3 days to figure it out. It's like I have no business being in that business. Yep. And I can't do what I wanted to do because all along during that year, even though we knocked the ball out of the park on their measure, my measure was I want to teach these kids how to be more holistic warriors, to become self-evolutionary, and to develop a moral compass, right?
Yeah.
To evolve themselves, not just to swim faster and run harder, you know what I mean, and do more push-ups.
Absolutely.
And the Navy wouldn't have anything to do with it. They're like, no, we just want you to get these guys into the boot camp and then to BUDS and let the training do the rest.
It almost sounds like you want more of the soul aspect of the individual as opposed to just
mind, body, spirit.
Yeah.
We can get into that, but it's I wanted a more integrated warrior, whereas the Western world has really separated and segmented people, and it's a cause of huge suffering and strife in the world because we're separated from ourselves, we're separated from our spirits, we're separated even from our emotions.
Yeah.
And then we go out in the world and we're like freaking wrecking balls.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then because we're so discontent, everyone pours their shit into everyone else. They project their shadow onto everyone else, and then this plays out at societal level and an international level in geopolitics. That's why we have clashes of cultures, right? Because everyone's just separated from themselves and separating from the sameness in all of us. We're all utterly unique as humans, but we have this unique sameness, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly.
Like I feel completely connected to you guys because we have the same kind of desires to help people.
Yeah.
We have the same kind of, we wake up every day and put our pants on and, we like to have a beer at night, at least I do.
Yeah, me too.
Once in a while.
Yes, for sure.
Maybe more than once in a while.
Sure.
Whatever.
Yeah, of course.
Stuff like that. We're all humans, and I've been all around the world in 55 different countries. And every country I've been to, I've had that experience. Like everyone's really decent.
Yeah, once you
and
get
then there's negative and there's
connect.
positive. Yeah, but
and on that soul level, there is something I've been dying to ask you because I was a naturopath for 20 years before all this business stuff started, and I've learned a lot of bad stuff, in regards to I've had bad teachers, like
Yeah.
second hand, third hand.
There's a lot of false
And
information
exactly.
out
So one thing that I've never been able to have a good understanding of for myself, like when I learn about yoga and meditation, and I'm one of those annoying people that ask these questions all the time.
Yeah.
And I never know, when am I using my imagination? When am I using my brain?
Right.
When am I using my mind?
there. Nice.
And when am I using this soul spirit? Like for example, recently I've done some stuff myself, just trying to recalibrate, get back into my body and out of my head a little bit and just stop thinking so much. But I don't know, you mentioned something earlier about mind versus brain.
Yeah.
And how do we, can you explain
I
that
try
difference?
to, again, this is my experience or my perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've been studying this stuff really from a subjective perspective for a long time, since I first sat on that meditation bench in 1985. I'm not a research scientist, and to be fair, I don't put a lot of credibility in research's ability to understand the mind.
Yeah.
They're not even 0.01%.
Well, they don't know where it is, right?
where
They can't
where it
find the
resides.
mind.
That's right.
Exactly.
Same with the
They
soul.
conflate it to the brain,
Yeah.
and they can't find the soul.
Yeah.
So let me try to unpack this. First, you're right. The mind is not the brain. The brain is the executive agent organ of the mind system. It helps us make meaning. The mind also is part of, the other organs. The big ones are the heart and the biome, the belly.
Yeah.
But also your entire nervous system, your periphery, your fascia. So your body is your brain, but it's broken down into three primary elements, right? Gut, heart, and brain.
Yep.
All of those have neurotransmitters. All of those have neurons in them. The central nervous system sends information. The electrochemical sends information. But your mind pervades all that. Your mind is informed by all that. Your mind is not all that. Your mind can be outside your body. It can be in your body. You can leave your body.
Yep.
Right? The spirit is like a spark of divinity. You don't use your spirit. Your spirit just embodies you, and you can either through your mind acknowledge it and connect with it and allow the spirit to inform you, or you can shut yourself off from it.
Yeah.
And I think that's where evil comes from, is where people literally just have no awareness of any kind of spiritual aspect, and they completely deny it, and therefore the spirit is just shut off. It doesn't flee the body. It just not recognized. It's that goodness potential is still in an evil person, but person is evil because he's not allowing himself to experience or to find that aspect.
Right.
The yogis and the Tibetan Buddhists would say that spirit resides in your heart.
Okay.
And when one of the ways to connect with it is through imagery. Visualization is the most powerful way that the mind works. Okay. And to visualize the spirit as like a diamond in your heart.
Yep.
And that whole mantra, Om Mani Padme Om, is the diamond in my heart is, expanding and I'm connecting with it, right?
Yeah.
And I'm bringing it out, and I recognize the diamond in your heart is basically what that means.
Yeah.
So let me kind of bring this back out of the metaphysical to the more practical. Your brain itself, when you don't train it, let me put it this way, we're always training our brain. If we're not actively training it to use our whole mind, then it's going to be conflated to be trained by the way society wants to train. This is back to our conspiracy theory.
Yeah.
It's probably not intentional, but the Western society has trained the brain to be fully just analytical, judgmental, rational.
Yeah.
Which is one of the way that your brain works. It's a very powerful way, and that's like the neocortex thinking, left brain thinking. And then we think, there's this right brain thing, and it doesn't really work quite like that because it's more of a holistic thing, but the right brain is more creative, more spontaneous, and so like you want to tap into your artistic qualities or you want to develop that side, then, get into creative writing, do something creative. But we don't really train that.
Yeah.
Maybe Montessori, is starting to get into that, Waldorf systems, right? Now, there's a lot of new pop-up academics that recognize and starting to train that, and that's really good news.
Yeah.
Excuse me, but there's 5 primary ways the brain works. The first and the dominant one in the West is the rational thinking, judging, solving, scientific, materialistic aspect of your brain. Second is dreaming, completely unique function of the brain. And a lot happens in dream state. A lot of subconscious programming, a lot of, kind of maybe this is where you're connecting to your spirit, and it's probably trying to inform, how you process and digest all the information you take in. Memory. Now, memory is closely related to imagery because you can't memorize or remember necessarily without some sort of image, right? But it's distinct and discrete capability of the brain.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's 3, right? And then there's imagery. And I think, like I mentioned earlier, we train rational thinking, like I'm going to solve this problem, I'm going to think through this strategy. We train that ad nauseum, and it's very powerful. But even more powerful is imagery. The ability to visualize and use imagery to create the conditions we want in our lives, both positive and negative.
Yeah.
And so if you're a disaster mongerer or you're a super negative person and you're fantasizing or always obsessing about something not working, it's not going to work because you're creating the conditions through your
Totally
imagery
agree.
that, basically everything is conceived in the mind of man, and it's either co-created or created individually, depending upon, the strength of that image. And so when we develop positive imagery and clarity around where we want to go and what we want to do, and we practice it every day, which is what we call visualization. Visualization is the practice of imagery. Imagination is the creation of a new image. And so when we're talking about, let's take ATP. You have a 20-year vision for the company, how many people and how you're going to affect, individuals and humanity at large. I have a similar kind of vision with Unbeatable Mind, or Unbeatable, and I visualize it every day. And the more I visualize it, the more energy, the more firm that image gets, the more real it gets, and the more the actual outer structure of the organization is going to start looking like that, and the more it's going to fulfill that mission. So what we're doing with future visualization is creating a memory of the future state.
Yep.
Yeah, right.
And then that just like any memory, you believe it happened in the past, well, you believe it happens in the future.
And memories have emotions attached to
right, and that's so visualization is first experienced just as imagery, and then it's experienced with emotion, and then it's experienced in such an intensely alive way that it's almost as if, or even more alive than what you're experiencing in the real world.
Yes.
There's very few people who get to that level of fidelity with imagery, but it's definitely a skill that we all have.
I know that the
powerful.
Ford, which is interesting because obviously amazing business leader Henry Ford said if you think you can, you can. If you think you can't, you can't. Again, that's tapping in a little bit to that ability of creating the world that you want to create inside your mind.
Right.
And a lot of that comes down to the belief. There's something I wanted to ask on that, and this is something very fascinating that I read about a few years ago. Of you're talking about the heart and the mind. There was a little girl that had a heart transplant. I don't know if you've heard this.
No,
right?
I've heard stories like this.
And
she probably picked up imagery or information from the former owner, so to speak.
Well, what was fascinating is that the heart that she had received was somebody who had actually been murdered, had actually been shot in the head. And she kept having visions of the person, the murderer, and through that testimony was actually able to submit that, and actually the person was convicted through other evidence. Right. So there is something about the heart in terms of it just and I don't know enough. I mean, obviously, Mark, this is kind of more your area than mine, but I'm just fascinated. There's so much about the body. There's so much about visualization. There's so much about the impact of the heart, the soul, the mind. That, as you're saying, in the West largely,
it's all information. Right? We're all energy and information. That's what the mind is. It's a really refined, subtle, energetic information state, and it takes energy and information in through every breath. And then it's, we make sense and meaning through the brain and the brain system, which includes the heart and the belly. What I can imagine is kind of like we talked about the biome. There's stored information in the heart from the previous, occupant or owner.
Yeah.
And that information was able to be accessed by this young lady, probably because she was also very open and intuitive, because she hadn't been shut down by, society's, tramplings yet.
And there's a practical, I don't know if you've ever heard of a gentleman, and he's tag named as the Miracle Man. Have you ever heard of him? He was a gentleman in South Africa who flipped his plane and basically severed his neck and had locked-in syndrome, could only move his eyes. And when the doctors came in and said, that's it, you're never going to walk again, he would actually get them he would tell them to go to the room. He was actually using eye signals, and then he started to be able to blink, and then he started to be able to talk. And anybody negative, he actually said, you're not allowed in the room. I'm walking out of here 12 months later, and guess what he did?
He did that, huh?
And modern science still says he is a miracle.
So Joe Dispenza talks about, his own healing from a massive, spinal injury and, getting just crushed. And, it turned his life around from being a chiropractor to being, kind of almost a metaphysical teacher about the power of the body mind to heal.
Yeah.
And, food's part of that we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
You eat the right food curated with your own hands and you will get no disease. I mean, it's just there's enough evidence to prove that, and yet we're so far away from that. But ultimately the mind is, when it comes to healing, when it comes to the ability to transform and create, especially positive things, hopefully, also negative, it's unbelievable. Like, we're barely scraping the surface of our potential as human beings. And that's a big premise we have at my company, Unbeatable, is that you're capable of 20 times more. We set out to prove that to people through our SEAL Fit Crucible events. One of them is 50 hours of nonstop physical mental training.
Wow.
Similar to the SEALs Hell Week. The whole reason for Hell Week is to prove to the SEAL that they're capable of far more than they thought they were, and to prove to the team that the person that gets through that is going to be there for you in the hardest, most challenging situations on the planet, which is sustained combat over multiple days with no sleep, constant stress. And when you get through that training, you're like, oh yeah, there's not a damn thing that is going to stress you out or, put you over the top. Now, having said that, a lot of people don't continue their training, and this is where we come in. It's like we say, if you want to train to evolve yourself and to find 20x and then 20x again and then again, you got to train every day. Just like the Zen master, just like the yogi master. You can't do one and done. 5 days isn't going to do it for you. There's no seminar that's going to transform you. Not a damn one. You have to train every single day. And you have to train with effective tools, and you have to use them in the right way, in the right sequence. Otherwise, you're not going to find any success. One of my yoga teachers says, if you're an asshole and you start meditating and you meditate for 20 years, you're just going to be a more focused asshole.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so many people tell me, well, I can't succeed in meditating. I'm like, well, what are you doing? Well, I'm doing a little of this, and I try that, and I try this app, and I try that. I'm like, you're really not doing anything right now except for training some bad habits. Slow down, choose one thing. Here's the one thing. Start with slow, controlled nostril breathing.
Right.
We have a practice called box breathing. Do that every day for a year. And that turns into a concentration practice. So start with breath. Get your movement, get your diet, get your sleep, get your homeostatic balance, your nutrition, everything lined up, because no matter how much training you do, if you're completely out of balance, it's not going to land.
Right.
So get yourself back into balance. Start thinking positively. Start breathing to get your body and mind, clear and into the right kind of groove so that the training can land. It's like cultivating. Then you start concentrating. And then
you start creating.
Then you can start creating through visualization, and then you can begin to access the fifth way the brain works, which I never got to, which is direct perception. Direct perception is when you know without knowing how or why you know something. It's when you get out of your own way. This kind of speaks to your question originally. How do I know when I'm connected to my spirit? How do I know when my higher self? You need to get out of your own way, and this is a skill. So we train this. We call it the witness process.
Is that how the breathing would help?
The breathing leads you there. The breathing is the bridge that you walk from the outer physical to the inner kind of subtle, to ultimately to the causal realm, which is the spiritual realm. We ride the breath in. We train ourselves to turn inward, to work with our mind. We work from the perspective first within cognition. So the way I teach this is, first you need to learn to think about your thinking, and this is traditional mindfulness. Thinking about your thinking is like partitioning your brain into two hard drives. One of them is the person watching you, which is the other hard drive, doing your thinking. And that's really powerful, because now you create this space where you're like, I'm not those thoughts. I'm something different, but it's still done from in the construct of the thinking mind.
Yep.
That's step one. The next step, using the breath and continuing concentration training, is we turn further inward and we look for the witness. And the witness is the spiritual witness.
Yeah.
Right? The part of you that is always present, the part of you that right now while you're listening is aware of everything around you but is still able to cognize the words.
Yep.
It's your spiritual nature. And this is the part of you that is in awe and without words, without thought, without anything going on when the baby's born or at that beautiful sunset.
Yeah.
And we think those are mystical, magical moments that are flow state.
Yeah.
It's just your perceiving mind kicking in and witnessing what's going on, absence of thought, because you've been stunned into silence.
Yeah,
Or like
wow.
a really rigorous workout could do that to you for a moment. You're like,
Sure.
Yeah.
here I am, I'm right here, but there's not much going on upstairs.
Yeah,
You know?
So does that lead to precognition?
It can.
Because
Because all information in that direct perceiving witnessing state, you're falling out of linear time.
yes.
And time then slows down, right? So we teach these skills so that you can activate, you can get into that state at will, intentionally, and you can slow time down, you can speed it up. You have access to vast stores of information, so you can make better decisions. It's pure, and so this is the more time you spend there, the more you recognize the purity of the spiritual nature, love, bliss, joy. You're not in agitated states. You're not in fear, negativity, jealousy, rage,
and everything
anger.
be so important.
Everything, because everything has to come into alignment.
Yeah.
Body, mind, spirit, whole
So
mind.
if you're holding a defensive posture, I mean, if the traps are up,
You're
you've got
locking
bad
it,
posture,
right.
if
You're
you're
locking
not doing
yourself
that
up.
breathing,
Right.
then you're never going to be able to quiet the mind.
You got to
are you?
get all the physical
And that's why it's so
mental
important
stuff
to-
out of the way.
That's where
Well, you see-
it's the holistic approach. Then.
Yes,
so
for
therefore,
sure.
we need the posture.
We
need
call
to
it
make sure that's
integration,
going to be there.
which
We
is-
have all of that needs to be there for you to be able to be capable to get into that mindset.
Right.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
right.
And that's why you need the holistic
I think
approach.
that's why elite athletes find it easier than the average person, because they do so much work on their body and their posture and their mind, and but they do it for performance.
Yep.
And so
Yeah.
when they're performing, they're able to get into that perceiving mind and access that kind of present moment flow state where it's like, can you imagine like you or I being, well, maybe rugby, but for me being on a football field and having 8 dudes charging full speed at me, and to be able to land a missile in its target downfield, I could possibly do that in a million years.
Yeah.
But Tom Brady does it every time.
Yeah.
Because he's trained relentlessly for 30 some
Shut
odd
it out.
years.
And you see a 100-meter
Yeah.
sprinter in slow motion.
Yeah.
Just
Perfect.
relax and just the breathing and everything's
No.
soft.
Yeah.
It's like the
loose
Matrix.
and-
Everything's going so slow.
Yeah.
I could think ultimately integrated training, you end up being like Neo, at the end of the Matrix, where the bullet's coming, and this is how Ushiba, who's the founder of Aikido, was able to, dodge the bullets.
Yeah.
In his mind, that bullet, he could see it coming slowly, and he just got up and scooted like a ninja, faster than the other, humans could see. Again, I don't know how he did the physical movement that fast, but I've been around long enough and I've seen enough things to know that the human capacity, the mind's ability to direct the body to do extraordinary things is amazing. And we've seen, like this guy you talked about, the Miracle Man, to heal from a severed neck in a year, walk out. A mom whose kid is trapped in the car to lift that freaking car
We've heard
up.
of those before.
Right. Nakamura, slicing through 6 blocks of ice. If I had tried that, if any of us tried it, we would be dead, right?
Yeah.
We'd kill ourselves. He did it by projecting his energy and his mind ahead of his forehead.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't his head breaking the ice.
Yeah.
Right? It was
crazy.
something else breaking the ice.
We spoke a little bit about precognition, and I've had moments of my life of really weird clarity with stuff where I remember one time someone was rolling dice and I called out the numbers 5 times in a row, including whether it was going to be hard or soft. And
cool.
Well, if you look at the mathematical equation on that, I forget what it is, but it's not possible to be able to do that. And you tap into these things a little bit, but of course I don't understand how I've got there, but I know that these things exist. And I think a lot of people tap into metaphysical. A lot of people, because again, it's not backed by observational science in terms of what we understand, they dismiss it, especially in the West. But if if you look at a lot of the ancient text, whether it be through India, through the yoga,
Right.
Even some of the old texts in terms of even the ancient Jewish texts and even the Bible talk a lot about these sort of things, which put us into a state which is that of not worrying, not being self-absorbed or self-focused. It's actually transcends, if you like, the information that you're getting in, and instead of just being a receptive vessel, you're actually then starting to project and actually, as you said, you're starting to create. So, it's
and our
it's
premise
fascinating.
is that can be trained.
Yeah,
And there's a lot to it. It's not simple, but the more you get into it, the simpler it gets.
Yeah.
Because everything starts to come together.
yeah,
And if just like anything, you want to learn science, you got to divide it and start. But then ultimately, it starts coming together.
Yeah.
In a holistic kind of thought process. Same thing with this training. We break it apart and say you got to train yourself physically, mentally, emotionally, intuitionally, and spiritually. The term we use for spirit is kokoro. It's a Japanese kind of warrior term, which means heart and mind integrated into your action.
Yes.
Heart, mind, action.
yep,
So that also speaks to aligning with your calling, serving from the perspective of what your soul is telling you, what your spirit is telling you, or directing you or guiding you to be your unique reason for being on this planet.
Yeah.
And we believe that everyone has a unique calling, and if you don't align with the calling, then you're going to bring some suffering to yourself, and you're essentially not fulfilling your reason for being on this planet in this go around. And so it's that, but it's also recognizing goodness, and that goodness needs to be curated and cultivated to push back against the negativity of the world.
Yep.
Because negativity is the default mechanism of the human brain, right? The thinking brain is always going to be looking for the negative. It's going to be picking up all the negative signals. I mean, you look at the media. I mean, everything's negative, it seems like. So you got to push back against that, and you've got to cultivate the positive while also doing the emotional work to eradicate negativity, which comes from childhood trauma, which comes from patterning and conditioning from your parents, from the epigenetics and all that. So there's a lot going on there.
Yeah.
Physically, we've talked a lot about you got to get your body and your physiology into a state that it can receive information, energy can flow, your biome and your heart are able to be, and your nervous system are able to work in concert with your brain to allow your whole mind to be experienced. Then you got to basically train your mind to open up and improve all ways that we just discussed. Improve the heart, recognize the heart's, intelligence and signals. Same thing in the biome, but then to train those 5 ways that the mind works. That could take some time, but it's the same tools that will train them. Right? It's not like different use of the same tools.
Yeah.
The breath is always involved. The breath will train all 5 of those mountains or capacities.
Yeah.
Then we use concentration, visualization, mindfulness, and insight meditation, which is more like the witnessing from the higher self, to really expose and to develop the emotional, intuitive aspects of your being.
Yeah.
and
then it all starts to come together until when you sit down to do your work, it's one integrated continuum of training where you're training everything simultaneously. That takes time to even understand, but it's profound when you get there.
And in most people wouldn't even understand that these things even exist, or let alone can be trained or taught or something like that. Sometimes even just acknowledging that they exist can make a massive change in a person.
Have a huge change.
And then it's that ongoing further development or training with those techniques. So what we
was going to say we're running a bit close.
Because normally we just would talk forever. And we have to
it's
more and more of these.
45 minutes to sum up your entire belief system, right?
So with the where do people find more of this information? What is there a web page?
They need to
Where
get
do we
into
go?
the perceiving state and just pull it out of the universe.
Yep.
I'm just kidding.
That's easy. I was just sitting there thinking, I was just trying something pop up in my brain.
Unbeatablemind.com is our website where we have the training program around this. They call that online training the foundation course. We run 2 trainings a year, 3-day. We call them the Unbeatable Mind Experience. We just had one 2 weeks ago. It's awesome. And this is where I and my team kind of train the Mark 1 motto beginnings of this process, because as per this conversation, we know that we're not going to train someone in 3 days, the whole chimichanga, right? It's a lot of work. Unbeatablemind.com. We consider the SEALFIT training to be a augmentation of it. A lot of people are afraid. It does come from the military mindset, but it's really powerful to wake people up out of their story, their limiting story, even the commitment and the training to come to a 6, 12, 24-hour, 50-hour crucible. And the reason of the crucible, we call it that, is because that's where you take different elements and you have a container that can hold those elements, and then you heat it up. You apply pressure, and then out of that comes something different. What's different is you.
Yeah.
You're you bring your elements, we provide the container, we provide the heat, and then at the other side of that crucible, you come out a different person.
And you find out what's inside.
Yeah, you find out we say you meet a new version of yourself.
That's it. You know, it's there's so many correlations, and my experience is I couldn't articulate them the way that you do, and maybe it comes from a slightly different.
Because you speak Australian. You know?
Exactly right. But I was going to say, in terms and just in wrapping up as well too. I would imagine this is for everyone, but are there any limitations? I mean, old, young. I mean, who is this course for?
Well, there are a lot of obstacles.
Sure.
In the first prerequisite is a sincere desire to transform.
Yeah.
If you have that, then it doesn't matter what age you are or what limitations. But at the same time, you have to do the work. And let's just say you haven't done any physical development and you're obese, and you're like listening to this and you're like, oh my God, that sounds great. I want to do that. Well, first you got to work on the physical to get that back into balance, and you can work on the mind simultaneously, but it's going to be really hard to go deep into the emotion, the intuitive, and the kokoro, right? I look at it as kind of like a Rorschach nesting doll. The physical is the outer layer, and most people, that's everything, and they use that to kind of continue to separate themselves from the world and from their own inner nature.
Yeah.
So we've got to get the physical refined and lighten it up a bit.
Yep.
Let more light information through. Look at the yogis, even the old pictures of Jesus. I think Jesus was a yogi, by the way. They had halos and they're light.
Yeah.
So we want to let more light through and in, and it can't do that if we're carrying too much excess weight, or if we're like even most bodybuilders are, emotionally blocking themselves from the world, and they're cutting themselves off. They're separating themselves. So you gotta take care of the physical, your nutrition, sleep, all the things we talked about. That's just basic, 101. And then you start working on, the mental training, which is going to make your mind more discreet. And now what happens is, as you develop the skills, and you develop that partition of that metacognition to where you can think about your thinking, you begin to see patterns. And the patterns are really the emotional programming, the reactionary conditioning from early childhood.
Yeah.
And the Buddhist said there are 3 phases: first 7 years, the next 7, and the third 7. And they all have a different effect on, establishing certain subconscious patterns, reactionary patterns that will hold you back.
Yeah.
And so you got to begin identifying those, but like you said, if you identify them and pull them out of you, and just by observing it as an object as opposed to this is who I am,
yes,
you can begin the process of transformation.
Yeah, exactly.
It's awesome.
So then we're going to begin to work on the emotional patterns, and so the outer edge of that Rorschach nesting doll is the physical, and then comes the mental, and then the emotional, and then the intuitive, and then right at the center, that diamond in the heart, is the spiritual.
Wow.
Yeah.
So we got to go in to get out.
Right.
And you got to go through those layers.
Right.
That's one way to look at it.
Yeah.
Mark,
But it's accessible to anybody.
Yeah.
Mark, we're out of time. But I was going to say,
we're going to do it again.
Man, we'll definitely love to talk with you more, because such a
I'd love to come to Australia.
a huge subject that
is,
and I really appreciate your time.
About it.
Yeah, I mean, like, you've got how many years experience, doing this, and to distill it just down to a few minutes. But for more information, again, your website,
unbeatablemimind.com, or my book, Unbeatable Mind, is a good place to start.
Great.
Yeah, you can find that at Amazon. You guys have Amazon in your
Of course, yes, we do. Yeah, the kangaroos we put it in their pouch. But,
Final mile, right?
Yeah.
That's awesome. Thanks for having me on the podcast.
Mate, thanks for coming on. Really appreciate it.
Products too.
Well, thanks everyone for joining us this week, and stay tuned for more of our special podcast from Lake Tahoe. We'll be back with some more soon.
Hoo-yah.
Excellent. Thanks, Mark.